I'm with Johnathan Feldstein from Genesis 123 Foundation. We've just heard about the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. Who is he, and how significant is his death?
Hey, Paul, first of all, it's always great to be with you and regret that we don't get to do this in person more often. Ismail Haniyeh was the head of the what they call the political wing of Hamas. He's the one through whom much of the negotiations on releasing of the hostages that Hamas kidnapped back in October were taking place, and that certainly will affect a change in the ability to continue the negotiations practically, if not ideologically. Hamas is probably not in a really good mood right now. He's a terrorist leader. And ironically, a terrorist leader who is living outside of Gaza in a luxury hotel in Qatar, apparently worth millions or tens of millions of dollars in money that he absconded from the Palestinian Arabs. So one of the questions I have, maybe you have a better sense of it, is what's the response on the street? Because they might be upset that we assassinate or someone assassinated. We don't know who yet, their terrorist leader, but he wasn't doing any good for the Palestinian Arabs themselves. So I'm kind of wondering how their response has been.
Well, I have actually read on Facebook this morning that there is a strike in Bethlehem, but I imagine for the Palestinians, he was a hero to them, for the Palestinian people. You can argue it both ways. He sucked them into a war through October the 7th and has brought death and destruction amongst the Palestinians, hasn't he? Or he can be a
Right.
hero, either way you look at it.
Right. I would hope that quietly some of them are at least waking up to the fact that he was no hero and he only caused death and suffering as a result of their terrorist ideology. Maybe I'm hopeful that not only there's a void that maybe will mean less terror, but maybe they will have a wake up and realize that they need, well, which goes to a bigger question that I'm dealing with right now as to what the real solution for peace is in Gaza, which is a big project that I'm promoting myself. Hopefully, they will realize this themselves.
How big a loss do you think he will be to Hamas?
Big loss, definitely a big loss. You can find within about 12 hours or less. We also had the assassination that Israel did take credit for of the Hezbollah terrorist leader in Beirut, in his apartment in Beirut. Again, a very tactical strike, just killing him and a couple of people close to him. And he was responsible for a lot of the rocket fire, particularly that which killed the 12 children in the Golan on Saturday this week. I think he's easier to replace because Hezbollah has such a big network of people who have rockets and missiles and can fire them whenever they want. I think Ismail Haniyeh is probably going to be harder to replace because of his contacts, because of the fact that their maybe their next in command is hiding in tunnels in Gaza.
You've got Nasrallah, who is the head of Hezbollah. You've got Sinwar, who was part of the October the 7th massacre. Are all these leaders in hiding at the moment?
First of all, Nasrallah and Sinwar have been in hiding. The question is where, and my question is if we've been able to strategically target. I say we because I don't know who was actually behind the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, but whoever it was, the intelligence has been great. I would love to go to Tehran and take out for lunch the Iranians who have been providing intelligence on where Haniyeh lived and when he was going to be in his home. And thankfully, he was there celebrating the inauguration of Iran's new extremist president. And look, this is what we see. But he's going to be hard to replace. And I'll be surprised if there's not a significant response in one way or the other.
We don't know who assassinated him. We imagine and probably believe it is Israel. But I imagine they must have agents on the ground in Iran, Mossad agents, and they can, a bit like a James Bond movie, if you like, trying to find out where he is. And then as soon as they know, they're able to tell Israel and they just take him out.
Goodness gracious, I would love to see the movie. I hope to be alive still when whatever happened becomes public. I think it's fascinating. And whether they're yes, I'm sure there are Mossad agents on the ground in Iran. The question is, what's their nationality? I do believe that there are many Iranians who are working on behalf of the Mossad because they realize that the Islamic regime is also their enemy, and by funding Hamas and Hezbollah, it's doing an injustice to the Iranian people who don't really care that much about Palestinian Arabs and certainly don't want to see their money dumped down the drain to fund terrorism. But whoever it is, it's intuitive that Israel was involved. But what I haven't seen yet was a reflexive denial from Washington either. It could be both. It could have been coordinated. I don't know how many missiles were fired. I don't know from what direction. It could have gone a lot of ways. And barring a complete Washington denial, I see every possibility that Washington was also involved.
How significant is this for Israel? Like in the last 24 hours, you've taken out two major people.
Very
Or if
significant.
Israel, of course, did do it.
Very significant. Regardless of whether Israel did it alone or had the exclusive role or a partial role or no role at all in the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the message it sends, as we were talking about before, to Nasrallah, to Sinwar, to President Erdogan of Turkey, who's made some horrific threats to Israel that he's going to invade Israel if we go into Lebanon. I mean, this is ridiculous. I think none of these people should comfortably be sleeping at night. And if I were them, I wouldn't be sleeping in the same place any 2 nights in a row. That's the message. And if we go back just a few weeks, Paul, we also remember quite a significant reprisal against the Houthis, almost 2,000 kilometers away after striking central Tel Aviv. Israel is certainly showing that we have the intelligence and that we have the ability to hit anyone within a very significant range.
He was killed in Iran. Do you think that there will be retaliation from Iran? We do know that Iran has actually sent rockets and drones over to Israel a few months ago. So do you think we're going to see something come out of Iran, or do they want to ratchet this up into a bigger war?
I don't know if they want to, but I don't know how they save face by not doing it. Remember the last time that the Iranians fired, what was it, 300 missiles, drones, and ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones at Israel in April? This was after the assassination of a much lower figure in the Hezbollah hierarchy than was even assassinated in Beirut this week. Not to mention the fact that Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated in central Tehran. It would be shocking to me if they don't have some kind of reprisal in some significant way. The thing I said to my wife this morning, this time, I'm not wasting my time going down to our bomb shelter. You know where I live. You've been in my apartment. The view of Jerusalem and Jordan to the east is stunning. And I'm going to be on my balcony filming that because if any of those rockets hit me anyway, I'm going to be dead.
How dangerous is Iran to the Middle East?
Iran is the head of the octopus. There's no question. If the Iranian regime were to be cut off, were to be put aside, however that happens, then you would find the withering of all of the terrorist proxies because they're enabled, they're funded, they have all the backing of the Islamic regime. It may take a while, and maybe you would be dealing with people who aren't completely controlled by Iran, but there's no question Iran is the head of that snake. And if I were the supreme leader of Iran, I would also not be sleeping in the same place more than 2 nights in a row.
We've already spoke about the assassination yesterday of Fuad Shukr, the number two in Hezbollah. How significant was his killing? And was he behind the rocket attack that killed 12 in the Golan Heights?
Right. Apparently he was behind it. I don't think he officially launched it, but he probably gave the instructions and probably also you told whoever fired the rocket what rocket to use. And remember, that was with a 50-kilo warhead that was going to cause carnage wherever it landed. So there's no question in anyone's mind that but there was a $5 million bounty on his head from the United States. This was no pawn in the Hezbollah army. He was a significant leader, and and it may be harder to replace him, but as I said earlier, there are many people who have the rockets and many people who have the experience with the rockets. So I think he's probably an easier person to replace than Ismail Haniyeh.
How are Israelis feeling today? on the street? Are they worried about what's going to happen in the future? Could there be a revenge attack? Or could there actually be war in the north with Hezbollah and Lebanon?
Well, first of all, Israelis are feeling exuberant, if not in the assassinations, at least in the ability to get the people, the intelligence, and Israel exercising that strength. And that's very encouraging, hearing and seeing that in all the news and throughout all of my social media. But yes, you're right. Israelis would be stupid not to be circumspect and be aware of the fact that, look, just happened this morning also a terrorist attack not far from my house, a shooting. Is it directly connected to the assassinations? Don't know, but I warn my kids to be careful today because you don't know. You don't know how this will inspire an individual terrorist or, as you said, an all-out war, an escalation with Hezbollah, or another 300 or more missiles and drones coming from Iran. We did hear, and I don't know if there was a correlation. I don't know if the US knew. Well, the US must have known that Haniyeh was going to be assassinated pretty close to the time that the Secretary of Defense made a statement that Israel has the right to self-defense and Israel and the US will support Israel in a bigger war. So maybe those are correlated. But yeah, there's definitely nervousness in Israel because, as you know, anything could be a trigger in the Middle East for an escalation to something much wider and that gets very out of control. And we haven't seen anything big like this, wow, in a very long time, if ever.
You're an Orthodox Jew. Is this a time for you to hold on to God? And have you seen the miracles of God during this wartime?
Ooh, very good question. Indeed, faith has to get us through. I love that you asked that, Paul. I think maybe I've shared this with you. My faith hasn't changed. I do see the miracles, and there are many. But what I also see, and it goes back to reading our Bible, the Jewish people from almost the beginning have been suffering tremendous persecution, wars, massacres. We read the Amalekites attacking from behind, and the Moabites and the Jebusites, and all the other ites who have attacked Israel. But we don't read about, in those biblical accounts, we don't read about the actual suffering that took place. The Jewish soldiers who were killed, 59-year-old men like me who were out defending their people, who were fighting alongside their 25-year-old sons and 33-year-old sons-in-law. And were all biblical realities. So where my faith has morphed personally is that I see us living out just a modern biblical scenario. And that gives me some comfort in the suffering that which we are enduring, not just since October 7th, but in general. And it's kind of something that I accept, barring the Messiah. And I don't know if that means that there's actually going to be true peace, but I don't see any change, and therefore I kind of accept that as our standard, and it strengthens me in a strange way.
What is your prayer today for Israel?
My prayer for Israel is that we remain unified, especially now as we're in this 3 week period of mourning preceding the 9th of Av, which is our universal day of mourning and fasting coming up in just over a week. My prayer for Israel is that we remain safe and strong. And my prayer for Israel is that our neighbors and enemies, our neighbors who are our enemies, will actually see and get to know and have a relationship with the God of Israel, which is part of my solution for peace in Gaza. And when they get to know the God of Israel and have a relationship with the God of Israel, they'll understand the significance of the people of Israel and the state of Israel.
You're an Orthodox Jew who connects with Christians. What's your website for people who'd like to know more about the work that you do?
Thanks for asking. So the Genesis 123 Foundation can be found all over social media and at genesis123.co. And if anyone wants to get more information about what is the solution for peace in Gaza, which is a big project that we're promoting right now and having a webinar about next week, which I haven't even announced yet. You're the first one, Paul. The website for that is solutionforpeaceingaza.com.
Well, Jonathan, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts today.
Always a pleasure, Paul. God bless you. Stay safe.
Thank you.